Hello and welcome back to Champions and Beyond. Gencon is just around the corner, and historically this has been the time where we have received the biggest news from FFG about their products going forward, including Marvel Champions. Now, FFG on social media have already announced that on August the 1st, they will be doing their annual in-flight review. And this is always where we've received the biggest news going forward. Last year's was the news on Deadpool, and it wasn't so much because Deadpool was the final hero of a wave, it was because of the new pool aspect for Marvel Champions. I believe the year before that was the announcement of X-Men finally coming, and also the announcement of the Mojo Mania villain pack. With that in mind, and now that we know we have finished the X-Men trilogy and that we are moving on to something different, it's time to speculate about what could possibly be coming next. Whether or not we'll get another single wave release, or whether or not we will go straight into a new trilogy. Over the past couple of months on Facebook and on Discord, I've had several conversations with different people talking about what could be coming. I read a lot of discussions about what people would like, and I've compiled 6 waves or cycles that we could very well see going forward. Now, I'm going to go through all of these and we're going to discuss whether or not truly we think that they might be what's going to come next or not. Please, if you have any ideas, if your favourite team could do with some extra support, then please let me know in the comments below, and also let me know what you think is most likely to come to Marvel Champions. The first of the possible options that we may receive going forward is one of the most popular ones. It's called out quite often when this discussion arises, especially online, and that is the Fantastic Four. Now, the Fantastic Four would make for a fantastic split wave. The reason behind this is you would have the 4 heroes, 2 within the big box, 2 within hero packs. Each would come with their own aspect, and then these would allow you to get Fantastic Four support for each of the 4 aspects, whether or not that's, supports, allies, anything like that is possible, having the 4 heroes all being released within one wave. Now, the way that they could split the wave, they could go in a couple of different directions. We have obviously Web Warrior cards, but they are all pretty much in Justice and in Protection. So could they go for a Leadership and Aggression Web Warrior to help flesh out the Web Warrior team? Or, I believe the Fantastic Four ally closer to the Avengers. Again, I'm not 100% sure on this. I am not the person to talk to with the biggest comic book knowledge, so again, please tell me if I'm wrong down below. But this is a possibility to bring back some Avengers that were conveniently missed. Maybe even to give a little bit more Avengers support to try and bring them back to the kind of power level that certain other teams have definitely reached since the early days. And we could see people like maybe Falcon. Another fan favourite that used to be mentioned a lot would be Squirrel Girl. But there are tons of Avenger allies that are in the game that haven't got hero packs. So there is plenty of option there. Now, might they avoid Avengers because there are so many? That is also a possibility. So we could see champions allied in to again get the champions some more support. Regardless of how they choose to do it, I think the Fantastic Four definitely work as a split wave, as a single wave release to do the team. Now, as far as villains go, perhaps that might then make things a little bit more difficult if they have more villains to face. The obvious one is Doctor Doom, and again, it's another villain that's called out quite often amongst the forums. Do I think realistically they will go to Fantastic Four just yet? I think that Fantastic Four will be kept back a little while. I think we're more likely to see something a little bit more abstract, and they will keep the big names just that little bit longer. So I don't see this one happening as our next product, but it is a popular one that's called out for by a lot of the fans, so well worth mentioning. Second on our list of possibilities is something I personally would really like to see, and that is showing some more support and fleshing out a team that we've had in the game for a long time that haven't really received the what I'm going to call the champion support that they got within the last single box, and that is an Asgard wave. Now, there's so much history with Asgard, there is bound to be enough villains and scenarios that you could play. There's tons of characters that could go into encounter sets, and it is a warrior god race. They are not the strongest in the game, although depending on who you talk to, there are definitely the fans of Valkyrie and Thor out there. But they do have their own weaknesses. So having a few extra heroes would not sort of balance the game in one direction too much, I don't think. I would love to see a Loki hero pack. Potentially, they don't have to follow the same script that they've done before. We could have a two cycle story arc coming next, and you could end it with Ragnarok. That would allow you to have 2 full cycles, plenty of different enemies to face against, plenty of different modular encounter sets to mix up your games. Some really cool stuff if they really delved into Asgard. Both of the heroes that we've received before have come in aggression as well, so a lot of the Asgard support that we have are either some in basic, a lot of it's in aggression, and I think we have Beta Ray Bill as an Asgard ally in leadership, but I don't think off the top of my head that there is any support for Asgard significantly in any other aspect. So opening up that design space, opening up some support for a team that has been in the game for a long time could be really interesting and could be a really fun way to go. I don't doubt that there is enough content to do a trilogy of Asgard, but I just don't think that, for me, realistically, they would want to get stuck in an Asgard cycle that's going to last the length of the X-Men that we've just had. Maybe you could do an opening Asgard wave now. You could do a standalone Asgard wave later to be able to split up Asgard and still have Ragnarok at the end of the second box. I think that's a real possibility. I think there is plenty of design space there to go for this one, and this one is one that I would really love to see. Do I think it will happen? Not entirely, but I am hopeful of perhaps seeing an Asgard wave somewhere down the line. Third on our list of possibilities is again returning to a faction that we have seen before within the game, and that would be a single box release centered around Hydra. Now, we have received in sort of later waves, we've received modular encounter sets that have included some of the early villains. You look at Rhino now has his own modular encounter set. You look at the Wrecking Crew have their own modular encounter set, to be able to mix them into other games and not just play their scenarios. Having a Hydra wave would allow, first of all, for some more really interesting and unique villains to come out. I've said for a long time I would love a Madam Hydra scenario, and I think she would definitely work in the space of a single box as the final villain. Maybe you have villains like Viper or Baron Zemo, even the possibility of an actual Winter Soldier scenario where you are trying to rescue Bucky and snap him out of the mind control of Hydra. Could be a really fun scenario to play around with. Really interesting design space is available there. You would also then be able to get some modular encounter sets, whether or not these are back of the pack modular encounter sets or actually in the big box with some of the villains that we have previously seen. Why not have a Red Skull modular encounter set? Why not have a Crossbones modular encounter set? Or a Taskmaster fully independent modular encounter set, not having to rely on Black Widow turning up for you to be able to get him into a game. Why not have some of these modular encounter sets? It would sort of give a nod back to what has come before. And as far as heroes that could be sort of worked in, or teams that could be worked into this kind of wave, we could see some more support for Shield, especially full Shield builds outside of Justice. This might be an opportunity for a Maria Hill or for a Nick Fury to come in. You could have the heroes from the Agents of Shield, or you could also go for spy characters and really fit into maybe some more historical. So you're looking at Dum Dum Dugan and Peggy Carter, either as her sort of agent status, or you could have, if you wanted to start to go into a little bit more multiverse, you could have her as Agent Carter. Will that step on too many toes with Captain America? That's possible, and I think they'd more go for the agent side of things, but either Shield or Spy would work great as hero traits. Again, they are already in the game, and this would just give an opportunity to help expand those traits and really build upon what is already in the game. Do I think that this is a likely direction that they'll go? I would love to see this as our next standalone expansion. And I think that there is as much chance with this one as anything else that we're going to discuss. I really think that that's a strong candidate for something that we could see very soon. Fourth up is inspired by a chat we had on Discord, and although Marvel Champions does not follow the MCU, none of its release schedule are lined up necessarily with the MCU. There have been times where it's definitely seemed like FFG have been given a nod to an upcoming project within the MCU. Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel being one of the first hero packs out, then getting a series and being in a film is just one example. She-Hulk being in the core set and then getting a series. There are a few examples of this where they've come out with kind of lesser characters or lesser well-known characters that have then been getting some time in the spotlight. And what was suggested and what I think could be fleshed out would be a mystic wave. And that is mystic on both sides. So there are plenty of mystic villains within the Marvel universe. There are people that have corrupted their power. And as well as that, there are a fair few heroes that could be added in to this, whether or not it's Wong, it's Clea, it's Brother Voodoo. There are options there. I think Pixie, being an X-Men, probably wouldn't make the cut if this were to be the next wave. However, the reason I mention this is because we've had obviously WandaVision, and coming up shortly is the Agatha All Along, I believe it's called, is the new series. And Agatha Harkness could be a really fun scenario to play against, very manipulative, very behind the scenes. She could work within the story arc of a campaign box where you see her within the comic strips inside the rulebook, and she is revealed as the big baddie at the end. Very much a possibility. It would follow along with some of what they've done previously with releases. I think this would be a really fun standalone wave. Do I think that the Mystics need more help, need more support? Definitely not. There's been support sprinkled out for them amongst multiple waves now. We have 4 Mystic characters already within the game, but this was a very interesting discussion we had, and although I think this is very, very unlikely, it was worth bringing up some of the links of upcoming projects and ways that it could be linked in, having this as a release around about the time of other projects coming out within the MCU and within Marvel in general. Fifth on our list is another very popular team that is called out for fairly often when this discussion comes up, and that is another Spider-Verse wave. Now, in the previous waves that we've had with Spider-Verse, the Web Warrior supports that we've had have only really been in protection and in justice. There has been a lot of basics in amongst there, but having a wave, whether or not it's a pure wave or whether or not they decide to split it, the way they did with the Champions and Sinister Motives, they could go either way, but having some leadership and having some aggression support could be really interesting. There are tons and tons of Spider-Men within the multiverse, there are a bunch that we've just had as allies that could be made into full heroes. And Spider-Man has such a wide roster of villains that he comes up against. You look at the likes of the Lizard, Dr. Octopus as a standalone villain would be fantastic. Craven as a standalone villain would be very sinister and work quite well. Maybe even Carnage, as he kind of, in some of the early cartoons, there was definitely the Venom and Carnage team-ups against Spider-Man. You could even have this as a way to release an Eddie Brock Venom hero pack or an anti-hero pack. So there is definitely some really interesting ideas and characters that they could go for within a Web Warrior wave. I'm sure there's more than enough to do probably an entire trilogy of Web Warriors. However, I don't see them doing that, for again the reason that it is such a popular corner of Marvel, that being able to stretch it out over several different one box or even two box waves would probably net them more interest going forward. You'll always have people drawn back to the game by introducing new Web Warrior stuff and some of the classic villains. So I don't see them doing a full trilogy straight out of the bat, but this is another very strong contender for a possibility of a standalone wave. The final possibility that I'm going to mention today, and I will stress that there are plenty more options out there that they could go for, but this one is one that's been called out for since the days of the core set. It has been featured since the core set, although never as a front line, as a mainstay, shall we say, and that is the Defenders. Now, a lot of people want to see street level villains and street level heroes. The Defenders are very popular, and we've had Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, Daredevil, Iron Fist, all of these in the game since the core set. Now, again, it's always said that Daredevil is one of the last big names that hasn't been previously released, and maybe FFG will want to keep hold of him for as long as possible. I don't see them doing a Defenders wave as a one-shot wave. I would personally think that they would go for a trilogy with the Defenders, and maybe you have Kingpin as the pinnacle of the sort of third box, as he really shows that street level cunning and violence and manipulation. In amongst this stuff, you could have some stuff with the Hand, and maybe go into a little bit of the villains of the Hand and some story of what the Hand are trying to achieve. So there are, I think, enough around that to be able to do a full trilogy of villains and scenarios. Now, on top of that, you would have the Defenders that have been seen in the previous TV shows. You've also got the likes of Elektra, and potentially on this image that I found, it has Moon Knight. I didn't think Moon Knight was ever classed as a Defender, but I know he would be popular amongst people. You could have characters like Misty Knight or Colleen Wing. all of these characters that have been in the periphery would be a lot of fun. I think a lot of fun for a lot of the big fans out there. As I said, I do not think that this will be what comes next. Would I love for this to be the next trilogy? Possibly, 6 months, a year down the line. Yes, definitely. I think there's a lot of people calling out for it, and I think it really will help the business model and the sales. I understand the arguments of them wanting to keep it back, but I think at some point it has to come into the game. And that is it for today's video. Out of these 6, what are your thoughts? Which of these do you think you would like to see, whether or not that's as the next cycle, or whether or not that's further down the line? What differences would you like to see? Is there your favourite hero or villain that I've missed out and I haven't sort of mentioned in amongst these that would fit in to these? I think whatever we get next, we are going to be in for a treat. I don't see the game going downhill anytime soon. Tony Fanchi and all of his work that's gone into the new rules reference guide that's just been released shows that they are wanting to keep the game updated, shows that they are going to want to keep it supported. And him as a new designer coming in, I say new now, he's been involved with the last couple of waves, but having him in there has really pushed things up, I think, for a cohesion standpoint. As well as that, I know Caleb Grace, based on all of his interviews that I've ever listened to, has got some real passion for this as a project. He's a big comic book fan, and I know there are things that he's mentioned previously that he still hasn't had chance to explore himself. I would like to say that the game has still got plenty of life in it, and whatever we get, we should be excited for. Let's hope in about a week's time we do find out some big news and we have some sort of idea about where we're going with the game. Until next time, please comment, like, share and subscribe. And most importantly, happy gaming.